Hey there, I'm Highcard, and this is a video on early game concepts for the Draconis Impossible Space Engineers Hardcore Survival Server. As a spoiler warning, I'm going to be discussing some of the geographical features of the starter planet, as well as some of the scenario's mechanics. If you want to discover these features on your own, this might not be the video for you. The philosophy of this build is skipping a crash site starter base altogether and putting your initial resources towards relocating to go find ice before setting up your production infrastructure and moving on to your larger engineering projects. This video is about how to find a source of ice long before you make a dent in your starting rations. You can think of this as an escape pod to ice speedrun build, but it's really just intended to demonstrate the concepts that you can apply to relocate fast, effectively, and efficiently with minimal waste and minimal drawback. This is for players who have tried and died a few times and are cursing Clang's name, or those who just want to understand some DI concepts a little bit better. This was recorded as a live stream, and I'll be jumping back and forth between old me's narration and new me's voiceover. For this playthrough, I wanted to spawn in a starting area completely devoid of any signs of ice to show how to locate it and what to expect in terms of the drive. This isn't necessarily a worst case scenario, but it's close. So here I'm just setting up the lights and making sure that any systems that could be using my power or using my ice reserves are off. You probably don't need to do this, but it's a force of habit. Landing gear, I'm going to do a quick unlock and unauto lock. We'll see why in a second. So what you're seeing here is that I've just realized that I've spawned without tools. This is a known bug that occurs with some starts. The way to solve it is simply to suicide and respawn, and you'll have your tools. One of the downsides of this is that my hunger and my thirst will be a little bit lower than otherwise, but it really shouldn't matter for this build, as I've mentioned a few times.
Health critical.
The goal is to get to ice way before any of that matters.
Fuel low.
Back to old me.
Energy critical.
All right. Welder, grinder, drill. Great. All right. All right, starting with right-click drilling, because dirt has very little stone in it. That I need O2. Oops, I forgot bottles are in here.
Fuel low.
Starting without the oxygen. There we go. Let's leave that there for now. And get that up. Alright. I'm just drilling down until I see stone. There's stone. It's drilling but not producing any, which is just probably desync. There we go. Down there, so as much as possible. Let's queue a bunch of ingots, and then I'm going to queue up every type of scrap. Now, at this point in the game, the you can mine faster than the survival kit can produce ingots and other materials. As soon as I'm up on oxygen, I'm dropping that off so that every trip down the mine I get as much volume as I can. And my inventory is completely empty aside from that. So no bottles, no nothing. And literally I'm just going to do the scoot a little bit. This type of mindless stuff is usually when I kind of gather my thoughts and just kind of plan things out of like what I'm gonna go about doing. So I'm basically just filling up here. Oops, and desyncing rubber banding because I'm on DI3. And there's 18 people on. There. Now I'm immediately going to queue up an assembler. Basic assembler. Put that in production and run back down. Now that will go to the end after all of the scrap and stone. And I'm going to pull that up in just a second. So that's going to go to the end. Now I'll produce everything else first, as long as it has the materials for it. Okay. Now, in previous starts, I would do this somewhat later, but since I can get more from scrapping now, I'm going to start taking any moment that I have full stone and start scrapping the ship. I've undone the landing gears, so I cannot take off all those landing gears right now, but I will take them off at some point soon. The reason I've undone the landing gears is because when the landing gears are locked, there's more of a chance of the ship clanging out and getting destroyed when I do the rotor trick in just a little bit. So that's all going to go in there. I used audio to see that we are no longer producing ingots, so I'm running back down the hole and getting more stone. You can use that audio of the survival kit working. Alright, there we go. Now let's take these off. These off. And the order of this doesn't matter too much as long as you're maximizing how much the survival kit is processing. In other words, if the survival kit's always processing, the order of this stuff does not matter too much. Be careful there not to grind the battery, but even if you do a little bit, it's not a big deal, not the end of the world.
Energy low.
There's Inferno going on, energy is dropping substantially, which means I'm going to run back the ship. Grab bottle, jump in there, and think about what I've done. Alright, so let's see what we've produced so far. I've got a bunch of plates and all that good stuff. Lovely. I'm also going to queue up about 20 interior plates. So this is going to use 20 kilos of iron. And the interior plates are going to be used as part of the connection point for the rotor trick. As soon as that storm stops, or rather as soon as I get full energy, bottle goes back in the connector, I go back down the hole. I am grinding the emergency rations because I do not need it. And it's a good amount of steel. Warning, you're thirsty. Speaking of rations.
Newbie here. Even though I ground down the emergency rations, if this is your first time trying this build, you might want to hold on to it for a little bit. The idea is that the starting rations should hold you until you have time to build a food protein resequencer. But if you're unsure about that, then just leave your emergency rations generator there. Back told me.
All right, so let's grab some steel.
Energy low.
Don't need much. Going to... Where's my... Where put this? Right. I'm going to line up the center of this with around the
side of the hull of that
Energy
of
critical.
the ship, just for positioning. About it's going to go about there
No
or so.
energy.
Right. So even though it's clipped in, it should actually. Oh crap! I need to lift that up just a little bit, just to make sure the rotor has clearance. Not a big deal. I just wasted one grid, but it's not a big deal. I probably could have done it, but boop. I want to make sure that this is on that side. Lovely. That's about... It's a little tight, but let's see if the rotor will fit. And I'm getting rubber banded all around. Just gotta kind of let it happen. Yep. Unable to place rotor. Okay. Let's pull this back just a little bit more. Here we go. Alright. Grinding down the head. Adding a small head. Before I do anything else, braking torque goes way up as a way of holding the rotor in the same place. I'm going to jump back for oxygen.
Fuel low.
There we go. Alright. So now I need to attach this to that in order to get power into the assembler. So let's grind down here. I've usually used the side of the battery as an attachment point. What I'm going to do in a nutshell is make a little bridge of interior plates, of conveyors, of unbuilt ones. And then do the connection. All right. Now, one of the things to note here is that my grid here, I'm going to do the connection right there on, actually I'm going to do the connection right here on the, right there on the medium cargo container. And I want to make sure that my connection point on the rotor is a little bit above. That way, if and when it snaps, the ship will snap up instead of snapping down. So let's take the braking torque off on this. And that's one way of making sure that we don't clang out. So this is in the right position. I'm going to push that off. That was my point right there. Got a rotor part there. I think we might need, let's see, rotor right there. I'll do the connection in 1 second, but I just heard the audio cut for the skit. So I'm going to run back down and fill up with another round or two of stone. Because I always want that to be grinding, especially now with the reduced yield. Alright, running back up, dropping that off. Now I can push this little arm back in position, like so. That's lining up. And now if it blows up, then I start over. But otherwise, attach. We're now attached. Lovely. So now we got a connection, like so to though. Something is smoking, but I'm not really worried about that. But at this point, we can add braking torque to this rotor. Doesn't matter if it's on or off. And then we're going to add braking torque to this rotor. Now this shouldn't go anywhere. Now I can safely grind off the landing legs. And again, these landing legs were unlocked before I did that connection. Because if the landing legs are locked, it increases the chance that something is going to hit the kind of immovable object stage and go boom. And I don't like it when things go boom unless I want them to go boom. So this scrap is going to go right into that cargo container. We're going to hear the refinery or the assembler booting up again, hopefully. And all of this is completely unneeded. There's other little hidden places where you can get iron on the skit. Or on the pod. Survival kit. Yeah, I got all those queued up. Cool. Alright. So now it's time to build the assembler. Now I want to make sure that I have no more than 59 steel plates in my inventory. Otherwise I'm going to waste steel plates. So I'm almost there. I got 54. I can drop those in. So I need 40 construction, 10 motor. So it should basically be everything I've just created. Grab that, that. And then we're going to have some steel in a second. Drop all that in and back down the hole.
And the importance, again, of not having the steel plates on me is I want to only put in the components that will bring this up to the functional line. Anything past that is just a waste of material. So I can save 140 kilograms of iron this way. And that might not sound like a lot, but that's 8 trips down the mine. If you're looking for a back of the envelope to decide on whether something is worth building in the early game, just consider that with a completely empty inventory, 1 full load of stone will net you about 2.5 steel plates.
Now as soon as I run up, as soon as I get that assembler built, that's what I'm going to be using for all construction, and basically just using the skit for crunching stone and crunching scrap. Alright, so let's see. No more than 5 more steel. Motors, fine. We'll wait to get a little more steel on that. And this is going smoothly. And while that's crunching, time for some more grinding. None of this stuff is needed.
Energy low.
Let's see how we're doing. We don't have any steel plates yet. Motors are going to come in. Like so. Again, just double checking so that I don't have any steel plates on me. Exactly 5. And that can get built up. Alright. Now, okay, for a second there, if I'd put that down, I would have been very upset. Now all the ingots are going to immediately come over. And let's keep grinding. Info. Stream this. Okay. Change the grid name, like so. Now, I'm going to do what's called a pro gamer move, and we're going to put in production 1 single computer. We're going to take that 1 computer. And now I'm going to start let's actually get some more stone real quick. We'll get some stone in, and then I'm going to start cannibalizing the front. The reason I grabbed that 1 computer is that when the beacon spawns as part of the survival pod, that beacon has 1 computer and 50 steel plates in there. I want that steel. Even if it's like, even if I only get 1/3 of it back, I still want it. So by making 1 computer, I'm going to grind down the tracking beacon, and I'm going to add my own tracking beacon back to this.
And that's going to be yet another way to get just a little bit of extra materials out of the pod. We're going to grind down the ore detector and pretty much everything that's not essential, including a lot of those armor pieces. The armor piece we'll do later, because right now that's what's holding the pod up. In other words, to put things in perspective with the tracking beacon, one tracking beacon is the equivalent of grinding 50 of these small plates. That's the way I look at it.
New me here. The reason that I'm focusing so much on scrapping is that I'm going to get a third of the resources back from everything that I scrap. This is really needed to supplement the somewhat anemic amount of resources that you get from stone. At the time of this recording, 1,000 stone crunches down to 7.5 iron, 1 silicon, and 0.6 nickel. So everything that I can get from scrap is going to save me making a lot more trips down the mine.
I yell and scream a lot about optimizations, and I don't think people believe me. So now let's make sure that this doesn't get cleaned up with a... Where'd I put my beacon? I swear I had it somewhere here. Beacon there. Computer. Single... Oops. That basic assembler. Computer. Running up there. Beacon's going to go right on top. So now I've got my tracking beacon and all that good stuff. Ore detector. It's not much, but it's something, and I do not need to detect any ore. I've not used an ore detector once on Purgatory. I had a really fantastic rover build with a large graded ore detector. Didn't use it once. But I loved that design, so that's become my go-to standard
Energy
design.
low.
And it's a 12-wheel rover design. I can get consistently, 60 to 80 meters per second on most Purgatory terrain. Ingots coming in. Now this scrap, I really wish I could do something with that. Unfortunately, the skit can't actually process it. Alright, so now out of convenience, I'm going to use one interior plate to make a ramp. So I can hop up. You could probably do this without it, but this is easy. Parachutes, where we're going, we don't need parachutes. Some people will grind down the connector. I'm going to leave that up for now, at least. Just the idea being that I've used that connector enough times as just a connection point to move the survival kit from one place to another with the intention of building a brand new ship around that survival kit. So I'm going to pretend that I'm keeping the connector for that reason. But it's probably viable to grind it down. Right, all that going in. Now I've maybe have gone down the mine. I don't know, like not very much. Let's see. Why is that not grinding? Gotta know. That can grind. Survival because the survival kit is full. The gray scrap can't grind. Why is the survival kit not grinding? Because I probably don't have motors on. There we go. And going back down. After the next one, I'm going to grab a couple of extra plates and start planning out the wheels. I'm going to use the off-road wheels.
Energy low. Fuel
Oops,
low.
steel.
one. Oops, probably need more steel than that just for... Let's go down 1. Down 2. That's fine. Do I have any bottles? I'm all out of bottles. Oxygen, so let's burn a little ice. Oops. On. Great. Probably shouldn't have to burn ice, but I don't need to use this ice for literally anything else. Turn that back off. Lovely. I'm just going to build... I need to make sure that wheel is is level with the one in back. I'm going to throw 1 block there. Grind this off. I see a lot of people will build a very wide wheelbase on their pod. You really don't need it. You can get a little bit more stability, but with the rockiness of Purgatory, a wider wheelbase will mean that you'll have more places where you're going to bottom out just from little rocks in the middle popping up into underneath your pod. That's our next spot. Grabbing the left suspension. I need steel plates. And I need to not rubber band back. Oops, basic assembler. Let's grab 2 of these. There. And there. Okay, so now I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Queue it up. Check out in production how much is needed. So I'm only short by about 200 iron. That is great. If there's anything else I can grind here, I can grind the stuff down there, but I want to leave that at least until I have the wheels dug. So I guess it means a whole bunch of time is going running down for stone. And I probably could have optimized that a little bit better with just multitasking. But I'm trying to be informative and entertaining, and that is, I don't know, and rubber banding. So that's a little bit difficult. I still have not made a vent. For most players who are starting out on the server that don't have progression, they can't build a vent right away until they build an H2O2 generator. So they need large steel tubes for that. The large steel tubes are, a bit of an issue. But yeah, I have not built a vent yet. Because I don't plan on using my ice for anything other than just kind of sitting there. Most of the time I do this build and build a vent, I get to ice with all of my starting ice. So I don't mind burning a little ice for oxygen and not having a vent. That's not the biggest deal for me.
Inventory full.
Unknown signal. Let's not get it. Some people will run off chasing unknown signals at every turn. Whenever I open an unknown signal, I am almost always disappointed. So I will get it if I don't have anything else to do, but I will never go chasing one just to chase it. Alright, so a little divot under that wheel well. A little divot under that wheel well. Oops, that's the connector. Add wheel. Add wheel. Now, even though I did not grab everything I possibly could for or rather grab all the components to build the
assembler, I am going to use all the extra components for the wheels, because it's not much. It's only 2 or 3 plates. But if anything gets damaged on a regular old rover when it's on Purgatory, it's going to be the wheels. So a little extra hit points is worth that. That extra 20. That extra 20 kilograms of iron total. A lot of people have trouble grinding these, finding them on the ground. It's about the hitbox top corner. It's easy to find if you kind of look directly at that top corner. All right, let's get some ingots. 300 ingots. I think we're going to be good to go. I think we have more than we need to be good to go very shortly. I need large steel tubes. Do I have any steel on me? Yep, I got a little steel. So I'm going to take the time right now. I will put a vent on just because. Why not? Because it's really not that bad. I will not be building the bulletproof glass for the... Actually, it's just silicon. It doesn't really matter, but whatever. And as I said, we're pretty much almost good to go. Now, this build, unlike the hinge build, which, again, I don't have a problem with people using the hinge build. What I care about is people using the hinge build and not realizing what all the downsides of the hinge build are. The idea of a hinge build is that you put a hinge on the back and then attach the assembler directly so that you can feed ingots from your survival kit into the assembler directly and then drive off with it with the assembler. Problem with that is that you're only going to be driving around 10 to 15 meters per second, and it's a very high likelihood of clanging out. Very high likelihood of clanging out. The plus side is that you don't have to rebuild the basic assembler, but that said, if I can go and find ice and set myself up, faster, then it doesn't really matter. And I'm getting a third of those resources back from grinding it down when I leave. And I'm not sure how long I've been doing this. I said I was going to start a little after 6:30. It's 7:14, so 4 wheels. Good to go. That was 45 minutes with stopping to explain things. Let's build that. Let's build that. I need two motors. Let's put those to production. Let's get some ingots. I think that should be enough. Let's clean that up. Motoring. Great. Cool. Skit done. Or skit pod done. So that was it. That's literally the entire build. Before going, let's go into the control panel. What I want to do, I'm going to call this one front right, front left. Now in the control panel, front wheels. And this was the stream this Mark 1. Save. And then I'm going to grab all of these wheels. See, Mark 1. Front wheels are steering. Wheels steering off. Front wheels steering on. All wheels. Power. Dropping that down to 15% strength. 10% height offset's good. Friction, we're going to drop that. I forget who mentioned it in terms of streamer. Power and friction. Power is how much torque your wheels are generating. Friction is how much that torque gets applied to the ground that you're on, but also affects sliding. You want, in order to get handling good, you want your friction basically to be as low as it can go with still applying the power that you need. Strength, this is just where I'm starting this. I like to set my front wheels to steering and my rear wheels to not steering. That's just a choice of handling. Now, just last check. Basically ground most of the things I wanted to grind. I do want to get all this stuff off the bottom for clearance. And whatever extra resources that I have here from the scrap, I will just take with me and use when I get there. But what some people would do in this situation is build a couple of extra large steel tubes and some small steel tubes, which is the thing that you really need. I'm rubber banding all over the place, by the way. Some large and small steel tubes, so that when you get to where you're going, you already have them. I'm not going to do that. I don't see a need to do that right now. Now, I've also seen people make these crazy piston rigs, and when I started out on DI, that's what I would do too. I would make 4 pistons, and I'd be dumb enough to put the large steel tubes into the piston heads as well, and that would further reduce my ability to move quickly. But I think that's it. We've got everything there. That's a beautiful machine ready to drive. So I'm going to grind down the assembler. I probably had some stuff in there that I should have taken out, but it's not a big deal. I'm going to grab that back in a second. It's probably just going to pop out. Yep. That goes in there. Rotor comes off. At that point, I could grind... Yeah, we'll just grind all that down. Boop. And now, to get the start, to get going. So, all wheels. I always set up my wheels in the exact same, my keys in the exact same way. Decrease strength, increase strength, decrease power, increase power. Let's do some interior lights. I call these close lights. And then I have the headlight. So then I'll do the high power light, toggle on off, close lights, toggle on off, beacon, tracking beacon on increased broadcast rates. That's just so I can see what my and then you can put it on decrease, but I don't want to ever accidentally hit decrease and cheat, as it were. I'm not sure if that actually does anything. I know it will jump back immediately, but I don't want to do that. And handbrake's off. I might need to dig this out just a little bit. Oops, handbrake is on. Might need to dig this out a bit. Let's increase the strength, increase the power. If this does not go out, then I will dig just a little bit. There we go. Ugh. Blink interval. I thought I turned that off. Let's up the power just a little bit. All right, so what's getting blocked? That's up there, that's up there. That's good, that's good, that's good. Okay. What I've noticed sometimes when your wheels won't move, sometimes if your strength is too high, it'll stop your wheels from touching the ground, from making contact, especially on larger rovers with, you know, these massive kind of almost tank-like suspensions. So I always try increasing and decreasing. And let's increase the friction on the wheels a little bit. Friction, let's go 25. I think that might help. There we go. Okay, and I'm off. Rings are that way. Rings are above me. Rings are that way, so I drive away from the rings. The rings do not go over the poles. That is false.
Hey, new me here, just putting this at 8 times speed because this really is just a lot of driving at night. On the live stream, we were talking about pros and cons of different types of builds. In a nutshell, what I'd like to get across in this video is that if you have a build that works for you, that's wonderful. And if you want to try a bunch of different builds, then the more the merrier. This is what's worked for me, and I want to explain all the reasons that it worked for me, the kind of thinking behind it. So that's why I was getting into discussions about scrapping and times down the mine and all of that stuff. Well, there I just fell down through the ground. That's really unfortunate when it happens. This was a really bad one. I ended up getting teleported back to the top, I think 5 or 6 times, because it just kind of put me in the same spot. This ended up getting fixed by turning off the handbrake, leveling myself, and holding down W. It's just unfortunate when that happens, but if it keeps going on, don't hesitate to put in an admin ticket.
And that's really it. I'm gonna, when I cross over from DI3 into DI4, which I think should be coming up soon, I'm going to find a flat area to do it in. Especially not a hill up. If you go on a hill up, there's a possibility that you can roll backwards. But I want to be taking that server transition with a bit of velocity, but not too fast. I've gotten flipped on server transitions. I've also just been dead on server transition. And I don't want to start any more admin tickets for that. On a couple of those transitions, I put in a ticket, and then just eventually, just after thinking about it, saying, you know what, no, I'm just going to restart. And that's perfectly fine. There's a base over there. As I get up to this starter base, I'm going to assume that there's no guns on the starter base. Just full stop. This is the starter base that I was talking about that someone would set up if they were doing a typical start. If they were doing a typical survival start. But there's so much waste there in terms of stuff that's just not needed. But those types of things, if I'm seeing them like way out in the distance, I will go up and inspect. If there is a, let's cross here. Oh, I feel like that's gonna. Oh, that worked out better than I thought it would. I will usually bookmark those. I will bookmark the places where there's really bad walls between terrain pits and where there are really good ones. I'll call those crossings. And so when I'm doing my GPS road trips, I will have. On my usual routes, I will have those crossings set up, so I will go and find them where they're completely flat. There's some mountains, but no snow on the top. Now the rings are really low in the sky, which means we should be getting to... Oh, yep, Purgatory Pole Sector 2. Alright. Let's slow down and look for a flat area. Worst place for it, I guess. People will often ask, is there silver on Purgatory? My favorite response is yes. And people will often correct me, say, no, there's no silver on Purgatory. I say, yes, there is, if you know where to find it. And that is in people's survival kits. Breaking people's survival kits for the silver is called mining for silver on Purgatory. Hey, I'm alive. Look at that. Oh, there's another little base. What I'll often do on a beginner pod, on a starting pod, is I will put a camera up on the top of the battery, and I'll use that camera to zoom in. So since we're right at the side, and since there's an ore... Ooh. If this were a real game, and kind of like pretending it's a real game, it looks like there might be a turret on the top of that, so I don't want to go anywhere near it. But since that guy built right on top of ore, if that were magnesium or cobalt, I would absolutely stop in, probably wreck the base, and dig down, grab a bunch, and keep going. The thing about cobalt is a little cobalt goes a long way. Filling one medium cargo container with cobalt is most of the cobalt you need while you are actually on Purgatory. I'll typically build a transport vehicle that I can use to drive out to an ore vein, and then just hand drill down, and then I'll fill, 4 or so medium containers with ore, and then drive back. because you really don't need any piston drilling for cobalt or magnesium, because just so little of it goes such a long way while you're on Purgatory. All right. Again, that battery is doing super well, even at full blast on... You can actually bring the power down a little bit. But even at full blast, 5 hours of drive time. No problem. There's no reason to build power generation at your
Starter base. Period.
Alright. Cliffs up ahead. We'll figure out if there's a better place to cross. It looks like there might be a little flat zone way over there on the right. I'm gonna edge off to that. That might just be a crater, though. I think I might have just seen a ore patch over there on the left, but I'm not quite sure. Either I'm not going to go looking for it, because again, I'm not continuing this build past the getting to ice stage. I just don't think this is the right venue for that type of stream, and also I want to get back to my shenanigans up in space. But if I were staying down here, I'd be investigating any semblance of any type of ore, and especially with the stone nerf, iron and especially and nickel are very much needed in terms of finding those veins. Finding an iron vein just would help tremendously in getting set up. So I've been driving at 40 to 60 or so meters per second. I would not be able to do this if I had large grid shenanigans going on with a hinge on the back of my pod. I would still be on DI3. I would still be way far back. And yes, I could have built a drill and gotten some mining done. But my motto and my rule about that is if you try to do 3 things at the same time, you're not going to do 3 things at the same time. You're going to do 3 things poorly at the same time. So I'd much rather do my driving and my mining and my refining well separately than do all 3 of them together poorly. Now, this might be one of the longer drives for ice that I've done, but I feel like I'm almost there. The rings are so low in the sky. Unknown signal detected. I don't care. Again, if unknown signals are in my way, I will go and grab them. I will never go out of my way for unknown signals. All right. Let's see. Where can I scale this next hill? I'm going to go right. Road trip, Purgatory. And I'm pushing right up against that speed limit again. The speed limit I've set on my wheels to bring it up to 240. So it's hitting 63, 65. And I've not been really moderating too much my drive. Now, if my wheelbase was too wide, actually that was not bad. But some of those rocky areas get really, really bumpy, especially at craters. And by having too wide of a wheelbase, you can really smack the underside quite a bit. Now, notice I brought that beacon up to the top. Not only was I getting the evil extra bit of resources that I'm now ruined for everyone else, but that by having it up there, it makes sure I don't accidentally grind it off, or I don't accidentally bust it off when I go over the wrong. Again, just zooming way, way, way out, looking for ore patches. Because you can zoom so far out and get so high above your craft, it really makes the ore detector essentially useless on Purgatory. There's very little reason. I'm fine with that. I think that'd be awesome. But then again, I'm a glutton for punishment. And I don't think you do as many restarts as I've done. Oh, there's ice. You don't do as many restarts as I've done unless you are a glutton for punishment. There's a base that I'm going to stay away from because since we are near the poles, it's a much more reasonable that is someone's second base and not their initial starter base, like the one that we passed maybe 15 minutes ago. So that probably has some type of defenses up there. I know that's underground and enough of a strange hole that maybe that's a wreck. Can't really see it. But seeing as how I've just gotten ice and this is my only survival kit, I don't exactly want to go and check with this vehicle. What I will do is GPS base ? East, and just let that pop up, this hold up there. That's a base, I think. Anyway. I haven't seen a drone repair facility yet. That's interesting. And almost there. Oh, there's a... is there more patch over there? No. And there's a base way out there on the ice. Super easy to see all that stuff. All right. That'll do it. That's it. I'm Highcard. Thanks for watching.